All right, we're back with another version of our reaction videos. This week I'm reacting to a video from Dave Ramsey. We've already done one video from him before. Obviously, Dave Ramsey is anti-debt. The title of this video is Keep Investing in Real Estate or Pay Off Debt. Now, y'all know my opinion on debt. It's like a tool. Let's call it an axe. So with a sharp axe, you can cut down a tree a lot faster than you could without it. But you could also chop off your foot if you don't know how to properly use it. And that's exactly what debt is when it comes to real estate. It's a tool. If you use it properly, it is actually a wealth building accelerator. So let's see what Dave Ramsey's take on debt versus real estate is.
Kyle is with us in New York. Hi, Kyle. Welcome to the Dave Ramsey Show.
Hey, Dave. How you doing?
Better than I deserve. What's up?
Hey, so I'm a real estate guy. I got my license shortly after you did. I was 22 when I got my real estate license, and I've been in the business about 14 years. Heavy on the investment side.
Getting your real estate license is one of the best ways to get started as an investor, by the way. We've talked about that a couple of times on this channel before. Actually, check out this video here on the 5 ways to buy commercial real estate with little to no money down, because it's actually a strategy that I used to buy my first office building, was getting my real estate license and using the commission as equity towards the down payment. So if you're interested in getting into real estate investing and you don't know where to start, getting your real estate license and starting off as a broker is actually a phenomenal way for you to learn from the ground up.
Side. I'm at rental portfolio that's about $3.5 million net worth, about a 68% equity position in it. And I did a calculation.
He just said he had a 68% equity position in his rental property portfolio. And that is crazy high to me. Crazy high. That means that he's only got 32% debt on his properties. If you run the numbers on his return on equity, which is that's an investment measure that people don't use often enough. If you run the numbers on his return on equity, it's probably very low. The longer you own a property, the more equity that you build up in it. And that's trapped equity that is essentially just there, right? It doesn't provide you any more value. You're not getting any more cash flow off the property just because you have more money in it. It's wise to go out, if you know how to properly use debt, and refinance that property, put more debt on it as the rent roll will allow, and take that trapped equity to go use as a down payment on another property. It's a great way to really snowball your portfolio. So hearing a 68% equity stake in his portfolios is kind of crazy to me.
I'm sort of relatively new fan, and I appreciate all the stuff you're putting out there. And so I did a calculation to figure out what it would actually take if I used all of the cash flow to point right at the debt, how long it would take to actually pay all of it off, which I came out to about 10 years and 3 months. But I guess my question is value in doing that versus value on continuing to use the cash flow to grow the portfolio, which...
He actually has a good question here, right? And I get this all the time. Should I be working towards owning all of my real estate debt-free? Right? He just said if I pointed all of the cash flow back towards paying off the debt, that means that he wouldn't take a dollar out of his properties. He'd be putting it all back towards paying off the note faster. And to me, I don't see the value in doing that. I actually think that it negatively hurts you. Because think about this. You could own one property with 100% down, or you could own 5 properties with 20% down and 80% debt. To me, the diversification of owning 5 properties instead of 1 outright, as long as you know how to properly use debt, it's a way better strategy. I mean, hands down, way better strategy.
Portfolio, which to date is basically what I've been doing.
Yeah, okay. So you've got a top-line asset base of $3.5 million, not net worth.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Total portfolio value is 3.55. Okay. Equity is 1.132.
So what do you got? 14, 15 properties?
Right about there. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Good for you. Well done. Very well done. And you're in a 70% equity position, meaning you only have 30% of it in debt. So less than $1 million in debt.
No, reversed.
Oh.
So 68% leverage.
Oh.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So he just said that he actually has 68% leverage on the properties. To me, that's actually a phenomenal position to be in. I love that 30% equity stake, 25% equity stake. There's nothing wrong with 20% or even less than that. But once you start getting into 20% or below, it just becomes inherently riskier if things should happen, right? But really, that sweet spot for me, in my opinion, as a commercial real estate investor, being in that 25 to 35% range is ideal. Anything higher than that, and I need to refinance and pull some cash out and go buy another property. Anything lower than that, I want to stay in it for a little bit longer, let the deal season, and hopefully my equity will appreciate.
Okay. So you don't have a ton of cash flow.
It's about monthly after all expenses, mortgages, CapEx, everything is around $7,700 a month.
Yeah, that's not much. Huh? Okay, that's what I thought. I thought it was tight.
Let's run the math on that. $7,700 a month net on $3.5 million in real estate. So he said he has about a 32% equity stake in his property, which on $3.5 million is about $1.1 million in equity. Right, so if he's getting $7,700 a month times 12 divided by 1,120,000, he's getting about an 8% net cash-on-cash return on his properties every year. That's not bad, right? I mean, he's cash flowing 8% off of his assets with debt. Now, could it be better? Of course. I mean, I wouldn't invest in anything that's below, really a 14%, but not everybody has access to the deals that we have. So it's kind of a give and take. One thing too, though, that's great about commercial real estate, he's probably not taking into account depreciation or any write-offs that you can get through a cost segregation study. Check out this video here on that. That is one of the best tax advantages that you could ever get out of commercial real estate. One caveat that I will throw on that is that I don't know what his debt service is. So I don't know what that could possibly add back into his cash flow. So it would probably go up from about 2.5%. But I can't imagine it would be that much, right? So it's still a very low return.
I mean, $7,700 a month is a lot of money, but not on $3.5 million. It's not. So that's It's not. Okay. Here's the thing. You said you're new to all this. Here's what I went through. We had about $4 million worth of real estate, and owed about $3 million on it. So we're in about a 75% ratio. Some of that, a percentage of that, probably $1 million of that was on 90-day notes because we were doing flips. Okay, mm-hmm. This is back in the 80s, way back. Okay,
that's super risky, by the way. I mean, that may be why Dave Ramsey is so averse to debt, and we're probably about to find out. But if you have a 75% LTC stake in your properties and they're 90-day notes, meaning meaning the longest that you have to pay that note off is 90 days. So think about that. If you take out it sounds like he's doing flips in the 80s. So you take out a $100,000 loan to flip a house, you've got 3 months to make $100,000 back, or else they're going to call the note. That's risky.
Okay. And I was in my 20s. I had grown that from nothing in just a few years, and so I leveraged into every bit of it, obviously, but I did good buys like you have done, which gave me strong equity positions, and so, I was at about the same LTV you're sitting at, roughly, and a little higher, but I had a higher risk position because of the 90-day notes and the flips, which is actually what took me out.
There you go. He said that's actually what took him out. That's really, really risky. I mean, most commercial real estate loans are on a 5 to 7 year basis. Even hard money notes are typically 4 to 6 months, depending. So, 90 days, maybe he was getting better rates on the 90 days, but like he said, ended up being the downfall.
There's a way to mathematically insert risk. It's called a beta, and it's a statistical measure of risk, the volatility of the hills and valleys if you chart it, and all of that, okay? So all of that to say is there's actually a math formula that you can use when comparing two investments of that type, because the beta is stated by the mutual fund company. It's a volatility index, and long story short, you can adjust for risk so you can compare a high-risk investment with a low-risk investment, apples to apples. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay. Now, having said that, then when I went broke in real estate business, I suddenly realized that in the real estate business, which I grew up in, we are not taught risk at all. We're just taught it's all leverage and it's all good all the time.
That's actually really true. A lot of people don't understand that there are downsides to debt. You think, oh, I'm just getting money that I've got to pay 5% on. But if you look at what happened in 2008, a lot of good notes, people who were actually making payments on time got called, and it forced people into bankruptcy. So debt is not this, catch-all, save everything resource. I mean, it is actually risky, right? So Dave's making a pretty good point here that I think a lot of real estate investors don't fully appreciate.
All the time. But common sense tells you the more leverage you have, the higher leveraged you are. Meaning if you had a 90% leverage position instead of a 68% leverage position, you would be at a higher risk. Agreed?
Right.
But we don't adjust for that.
Correct.
And if you had a 100% paid for real estate portfolio, your risk would have dissipated like light years from where you are today. Agreed?
Let's assume that he's making that same $7,700 a month, but had paid off his real estate portfolio. So instead of running the numbers off of $7,700 divided by 1.1 million, which is his current equity stake, where he was getting an 8% return, a cash-on-cash return, that same $7,700 divided by 3.5 million is a 2.6% cash-on-cash return. At that point, go buy bonds, right? Invest in the stock market, because if you're going to have that much equity in there that's only making you 2.5% on your money, it's not even worth the headache of getting a call from one of your tenants that a toilet's broken. It's just not.
Hey, agreed?
Sure, yep.
And yet we're not taught to mathematics.
I mean, in fact, I know that it doesn't even keep up with inflation, right? Inflation has averaged 3% every year, right? So you think about that. When you start taking into, inflation adjusted returns, you're breaking even, maybe.
To mathematically adjust for that, all we're taught to do is go, well, let's take the cash flow, buy more real estate. Let's go in debt some more. We do not adjust for the risk of leverage in the world that you and I are in. Okay?
I do think that's fair, though.
We're not taught that. Nobody does. And so that leads us to a faulty presumption that risk isn't there, and so we just go buy stuff on debt. And you would always take. I mean, what kind of fool wouldn't have debt on real estate? And we just go buy real estate, and that's what I did for years, and what I believed for years, because I was not taught academically, and no one in academics that I've ever found. I've never found anyone who actually applies a risk formula to the leverage issue in real estate, but it's there. We know it's there from common sense. All of that.
We actually take that into account with all of our underwriting. It's tough to just say, what is the risk of this? But we mitigate that risk as much as we possibly can by ensuring that we've done all of the market research, that we know the tenants in the market that are probably going to lease from us. Maybe we've signed some leases on the property already, which banks are going to want you to try and do anyway. And then we fully underwrite it. We say, well, based on historic costs and construction costs that we're getting from our contractor, and what I think it's going to cost to buy all of the FF&E and the equipment for the site, we're going to be all in at this. What are some worst case scenarios? We're going through the Salt Ranch Hotel redevelopment right now. In that project, we've stress tested it to show, well, if our occupancy drops 10%, or if our daily rates go down by 10, 15, 20%, what does that end up looking like on an investment return schedule?
That babbling to say, I came to the conclusion, and I've actually run some pretty sophisticated math models I developed myself because I'm a math nerd, that shows that paid for real estate will prosper you. A smaller portfolio of paid for real estate will prosper you more than a large portfolio of leveraged real estate over the span of 20 years. Okay? And so high leverage guys, nothing down guys, all those guys that have gone broke, I knew a bunch of those guys back in the day. I don't know any of them made it 10 years. They all crashed within 10 years. Super high leverage. You're not that guy, okay? But the nothing down crowd. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in all fairness and disclosure, I mean, I started it with 17 grand probably, and then we've kind of just rolled up, pulled the equity out, bought the next one, fixed it up.
Exactly.
Spent the money wisely, but it's all going right back into the same pool.
And if you look at 7,700 flow on what you got, it's not that great.
Right.
You don't have that much movement for the amount of money you are controlling and manipulating every day.
And this is also a side business. I mean, that's not my primary income by any means.
I think how you got there, I'm not going to be mad about. I'm just glad you're there. Congratulations. You've done great. If I'm you, I'm going to dial down that risk for my long-term stability. I would rather own less real estate that is working towards getting it paid for. So I might cherry pick the portfolio and keep the ones I really want to hold 20 years, and some of these others that I'm not that thrilled about, I might flip the equity out of those towards debt reduction. I might go the other way. Matter of fact, I know I would. All of my real estate's paid for, and I pay cash for all of it, and I got a bunch of it. Hey, man, thanks for the discussion.
I pay cash for all of it, and I got a bunch of it. And that's great. It works for Dave. It doesn't work for everybody, right? I mean, most people cannot start off and just go out and pay cash for all of these real estate investments. Now, obviously, Dave didn't do that. He built out his career off of making sure people never got debt, and then that has made him a lot of money. But what I would say for this guy, starting off at $17,000 and working his way up to $1.1 million in equity is unbelievably impressive. So kudos to you, man, for getting out there and doing it. I think it was Kyle in Syracuse. So good for him for getting out there and doing that. My final thought, I don't think that it is bad to have diversification within your portfolio, right? You own all of these assets in separate LLCs. So maybe you have a couple that you do pay off fully, right? So that you just know forever and always those are yours. No bank can ever come and take them. And you set that aside just as security for yourself so you can sleep well at night. But if you really want to grow a portfolio of properties aggressively, you're going to have to use leverage at some point because cash is a finite resource. So there you have it for my thoughts on should you keep investing in real estate or paying off the debt on those properties. Obviously, I'm very pro debt, but I'm pro the right debt. You have to use debt the right way. It is a tool. Just like anything else, it can be good for you or it can be bad for you. So I know that I said I would leave a link in the description below, but you can also just go ahead and click on the video here if you want to take a site tour of the Salt Ranch Hotel that we are redeveloping, and I'll see you there.